Hi, it's Adam from Reality Manifestation. I'm sure you've heard it all before. By following these techniques, you're going to be able to manifest what you want and desire into your life. If you're manifesting bad experiences into your life, you need to be in a higher vibration and be grateful for what you already have. You need to keep focusing on your desire and feel like you already have it right now. If you haven't attracted what you want, you've either done something wrong or you need to try harder, or you hear the complete opposite where you need to completely let go and just accept that you don't have it. Or you come across various teachings or more popular movies such as The Secret that claim that the universe is always listening to you. And it's like a genie, and all you need to know is how to rub on its lamp, so to speak, bring you your every wish and desire. With such bold claims, you may wonder, why doesn't everyone have what they want, and why do we go through such hard and challenging experiences? You then start to become curious to know if whether there's any truth to such claims, and desperate to improve your own circumstances, follow various gurus and techniques to only find you get very little to poor results, or situations get even worse. You doubt the claims are either completely false, or feel that there's something wrong within yourself or that you're a failure, as you hear stories and see other people around you getting results, whilst you're getting none yourself. If any of this sounds familiar, this is the purpose of this video, to go through why you may be getting little to no results, why by following various techniques without knowing these important concepts we're going to cover, why you actually run the risk of making things even worse. And this is going to be an in-depth, but most importantly, practical guide, so you can start becoming aware of why you haven't been getting results, what could be making situations even worse, or if you was anything like myself a few years ago, doubting if this stuff is even true. I'm not going to claim this is the only video on manifestation you'll ever need, or even that it's the very best methods and techniques to follow, as such claims are absurd. What I will claim is, however, for the general wide audience of people who are just getting into manifesting and the law of attraction, or any other label you want to use, and you're wondering why you're getting little to very poor results, or if this stuff is even true or real, then this is the video for you. And with that said, let's dive straight into it. So to start with, we need to cover a very important overlooked topic, and that is, should you be able to manifest everything that comes to your mind, or another way of labeling it, anything that you desire? A very big misconception is that the universe, or whatever you believe, attracts and brings things into your life, and I'm going to cover different philosophies on this later within this video, is just going to bring you absolutely everything that you desire, which I'm going to cover this in much more detail in a later video, but for now, think of it as like the equivalent of a child going to a parent and crying and getting upset because they're not getting absolutely everything they demand, they're not getting all the sweets they want because they really crave those sweets at that moment in time, but not realizing the ill effect it could have on their health. And the parent, adult, carer, or whoever it is that looks after the child may stop them from having too many sweets, to carry on with this analogy, so it doesn't make them ill, so they can go and have a more prosperous, better quality of life. And this is the same for the universe, or whatever it is you believe in that's looking out for you, that you're connected to, that brings these things into your life in the first place, is doing, it's looking out for you. So by you getting upset and wondering why you're not getting absolutely everything, or the claims that you can have absolutely everything that you want, is, like I say, is that equivalent of that child who's getting upset because they can't get absolutely everything they want, not realizing that there's a much greater intelligence that they're connected to that's got the best interest in mind. To expand on this point further, usually people, including myself, get into these kind of teachings because they either want to get more money, be the ideal partner, and a common use for wanting to attract something is attracting an ex back, for example. And now, let's just say you're following various new techniques and you're really trying to manifest and attract that ex partner back into your life. You may not realize deep down, which I'm going to go into this in a bit more detail later on within the video, what you're connected to and what's manifesting and bringing these experiences into your life is not bringing your ex back because it's not aligned with where you're going to be going with your true life's purpose, but also you've got someone who is much more aligned for you that's later down the road. but you have to go through some various different challenges or experiences from your own life first to develop and to become the right and ideal person for them. And by them, I mean who really is your ideal partner. Some people use the word twin flame. That's not something I want to go into. But just to use that analogy, just because you're not initially going to be getting what you want, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've failed or you're a failure or that you've even done anything wrong, which can also be a part of how you're applying the techniques, which I'm going to cover soon. But a fundamental concept you need to understand is that just because you haven't got something initially doesn't mean that you've been denied. It could actually mean something much better than you currently aware of is in store. Another very important concept to understand is that you are always manifesting. It's not just when you go to do a meditation, you go to focus on something or any other various technique, that the act of that alone is what's going to start changing and manifesting various experiences into your life. Even if you don't believe in any of the law of attraction, metaphysical kind of teachings, your beliefs and your emotional states are controlling your behavior and the thoughts and actions that you'll take. So the same with going to just change your belief one time or wanting to get a different view and outlook on life if you want to make a difference. Just going to make that act alone doesn't change your entire life. It might just change a portion of it. And the same of it is true when it comes to applying any manifestation technique, is that just by going about doing that technique alone isn't just the act of creating and changing your life. It's only going to change an aspect of it. You are always creating your own reality, whether you're consciously aware of it or not. I'm going to go through what I mean by consciously aware later on. But for now, which leads me to another very important concept, just to expand on this further, is that by going and applying a manifestation technique, when you don't understand behind why certain techniques may actually work, you can actually run the risk of making situations even worse. One analogy I like to use with this is, think of if you're using either a PC or a Mac and you wanted to find something on the internet, or there's a particular website you wanted to go on, but for some reason with that PC or Mac it keeps randomly disconnecting from the internet. But there's a certain setting you can go and change that stops that from happening. But with having little to no experience with using either a PC or Mac, when you go to use it and you go and decide to change the settings and you don't have a understanding of how the settings work and they're quite complicated, you run the risk of messing with the settings and making it even worse. And the same can happen when you go to perform a manifestation technique without a clear understanding of some core principles first. That can lead to actually attracting more of negative situations that you're wanting to avoid in the first place. So, for example, you go in, sit down, you do a meditation to attract more wealth, but you've got unconscious beliefs that you don't deserve money, that people with money are greedy or evil. So when you start to try and focus on these things, and you're trying to think, right, I've got money, but deep down you don't feel it, and you're just feeling emotions of having lack, and and it's also in your unconscious awareness as well, so you're not even aware this is happening. This is why you can actually end up attracting more situations that lead to even more challenging financial situations. A big part of this is because people believe it's just what's in their conscious awareness is what's going to attract, manifest what they want into their life. And actually, depending on whatever philosophy, school of thought you have on manifesting, it's all from the unconscious, which I'm going to go through more in a moment. But it's your unconscious mind that dictates and controls the behavior. And it's also that what's going to control your emotions, your vibrations, and also what signals you send out to the universe, greater intelligence, higher self, whatever it is that you believe in. To give a brief description of what I mean by conscious awareness and then your unconscious now, so you've got an idea of what I mean in case you don't. To put it simply, conscious awareness is basically what's in your awareness. So let's say you go to have a drink and you focus on the sensation and you put in the glass down, that's what's in your awareness. Whereas your unconscious is completely outside of your awareness. So for example, the signals are telling your heart to beat, for your food to be digested. So this is completely outside of your awareness. And by outside of your awareness, I just mean your conscious awareness. As you've probably already started to realize if you haven't done so already, and I've not even gone into that much detail yet, that there can be a lot involved around being able to effectively manifest what you want into your life. So which leads me to my next point. You want to start seeing manifesting as a skill. You don't want to just see it as like a one-off thing you do just casually when you fancy the odd change in your life. If you're already very happy and satisfied with almost every area of your life and there's just a few tiny little areas that could be improved upon, and just applying the odd technique here and there, that can be absolutely fine just to make those small changes. But if you wanted to make a radical shift in your life and be able to have much more conscious control of the experiences you're having and what you're attracting into your life, you want to start seeing it as a skill, such as if someone wanted to become a talented musician, artist, software developer, business owner, or athlete, or whatever it may be, would you agree that in order to get to that point where they're talented in these areas, even if they're born naturally gifted, they would have to keep developing the skills in these areas? The same is true when it comes to effectively, and a key emphasis on the word effectively, manifest what you're wanting into your life and experiences you're wanting, rather than going through the same old programs and patterns and experiences of life that you've been programmed into you that you're completely unconsciously aware of. Now, before I start to put a few people off and make them get the impression that I'm saying to start being able to get effective results is going to take a very long period of time, that isn't what I'm saying. I just want to put across the point of having the view of that it's something that the more you put into it, like any skill, the more effective you're going to get at it and the more you're going to get out of it as well. So to go back to using the internet on a PC or Mac analogy earlier, if you were given a guide on how to change the settings effectively and understand what challenges or obstacles you may come across during that process, you're much more likely to go and get the results that you're after. So now, just before I go through how to start applying this guide, so to speak, I'm going to go through some of the philosophies of how manifestation works. Now, these are only going to be covered very briefly, and I'm also not going to say that these are all the different schools of thoughts either, as there's so many I couldn't possibly cover them. And there's likely a lot that I'm not even aware of, as there are so many different views and philosophies. However, these tend to be the most common, or they tend to link to these different areas that I'm about to mention now. If you're wanting to see this list for yourself visually, you can go and view it on an article online on the Reality Manifestation website. So in no particular order, to start with, your vibration goes out to the universe and the vibration comes back to you, and that's what you attract and manifest. The next being you vibrate on different parallel universes and constantly shift between these different existences. And this is again based on the vibration you're in, but it's based on the parallel universe theory. Can't say that word correctly. Another being is that you just simply ask the universe and it returns it to you. This is quite similar to what's described within The Secret. Another philosophy is God or some other form of higher intelligence returns your prayers. Another being we're guided by spirits and they guide us based on the emotional states we're in and based on through our requests that we may give out to them as well. They pick on this again based on our emotions and also what we're saying as well. Another philosophy school of thought is that thought forms are created based on the thoughts we have on a consistent basis, and when they're potent enough, they manifest into physical form. Another school of thought is that we're connected to a higher version of ourselves, also known as a higher self, that guides us through our reality and creates our reality, and we experience it as we're going along, which we're connected to through our unconscious minds. And the last one being, even if all the above I've just said sounds completely woo-woo, and this is a more accepted, common view on how we create our reality, is that our reality is based on our beliefs and they're in our unconscious mind. There's also the term commonly used of the subconscious mind, I'm not going to go through now, which change and determines our actions and behavior, which determines what results we get and basically who will come into and attract into our lives on a physical level based on what's in our unconscious. Again, these are just a few philosophies and schools of thoughts, and I definitely don't claim these are all of them or that any of these are exactly how it works. It's just I wanted to give you a wider viewpoint, in case unless you're already aware of these different philosophies, that there can be much more different theories around how manifestation works than what a lot of the more popular mainstream teachings around manifestations tend to say. What you may have noticed with these different philosophies, however, is that they all have in common that it's within your unconscious mind, which is outside of your awareness, that has the true power to change and manifest what you want into your reality. So the power is within your unconscious, but it isn't so simple. And what I mean by this is, just by consciously focusing on what you're wanting doesn't mean you're necessarily going to attract it, and why you could actually attract the opposite. You could have limiting beliefs on you don't deserve X amount of money, or you only deserve certain kind of people as a romantic partner, following examples from before, and that's what you will actually tend to manifest, because it's not what's in your conscious awareness that manifests, it's what's put into your unconscious. And the act of intently focusing on something and getting a strong emotion behind it, the reason there's power behind that is because that intense focus and emotion behind it is what then puts it into the unconscious. So a very important distinction to be aware of. It's not the conscious mind that has the power of changing your reality, what you want to attract, or whatever label you want to use. It's the unconscious. And hence the terms I used earlier, with it being your unconscious mind, that means it's outside of your current awareness. So unless you become consciously aware of what's in your unconscious, that's why you'll attract and experience circumstances that you haven't wanted to or unaware of why, because whatever the experience you've had or whatever's programmed it into your unconscious is what's causing it to keep attracting into your life. So I want to come back to this point in a moment. So I want to go through for now, before I go into that in more detail, how our brains are designed to keep us safe and not to make us happy. Give more of an insight to why our unconscious can make us sabotage and not get the results we're wanting when it's actually trying to keep us safe. We have two primary drives, and they are the drive to avoid pain and the drive to gain pleasure, with the avoiding pain being the strongest out of the two because it's a survival instinct. And how this relates to what we'll attract into our life: if someone has an unconscious belief of earning over X amount means they're greedy or evil, and they unconsciously associate that to pain, if they go and try and make changes, follow some manifestation technique, and try and attract that money that's above X amount that the unconscious is uncomfortable with, they'll start to associate pain with it, and it will make them want to sabotage it. And if they came across that money, to either get rid of it in some stupid means, or an unconscious level, and also on a metaphysical level, send out vibrations that push it away so it never comes into the experiences to begin with, as well as affecting their behavior and the thoughts that they have. And this is why it's essential to become consciously aware of what's in our unconscious, especially around areas in our life that are wanting to change or attract different circumstances in. Otherwise, it can lead to feeling like you're taking 2 steps forward to only take 3 steps back. I'm going to go through some different techniques and methods later on in this video of how you can start to become consciously aware of limiting beliefs. Another very important and misunderstood concept to cover and go through is how much desire you have on something you're wanting to attract into your life. It's often misunderstood that the more you desire something, the more likely it's going to come into your experience and circumstances, which it actually does the complete opposite. One of the reasons for this is that you attract what you're aligned with, or a much better way I prefer saying this is you attract what you are. You don't attract what you think you are or what you want. You attract what you are aligned with or what you believe within your unconscious congruently, not just what you think you believe. And by constantly desiring something, it's actually sending out vibration and beliefs of that you don't currently have it. Now, don't get me wrong, desire, when it's transmuted, is very powerful and also very important, because it's often the start of taking something that you don't have, of then transitioning to becoming the version of yourself, or having the beliefs of that you have what you're after or what you did originally desire. As quite often most new beliefs that we consciously choose to have started off with a desire and started off as a change, Well, the problem comes when it stays as just a desire and never transitions into being an intention and something that you truly believe and are aligned with. To expand on this point even further, and when I first learned of this concept is from a great book I highly recommend called Reality Transurfing, is what in the book it refers to, it calls excess potential, which basically is that the universe strives to be in balance. We live in a binary reality with different poles, so we have up and down, left and right, hot and cold, good and bad, in that the universe strives to be in harmony and balance with these different polarities. And by putting something on a pedestal and seeing something as more important than something else, it's creating excessive amount of energy that the universe is going to strive to put into balance, and is going to put into circumstances that will stop you from being able to have that desire. So, for example, you're really desiring to get a promotion at work, you may completely lose your job. I'm not saying that's going to happen, I'm just using that as an example. As to the universe, everything is perfect. It's only ourselves and how we perceive things that we see something is either better or worse than something else. So actually having lots of importance or desire on something can actually push it further away, which is why it's vitally important to transition something from a desire to an intention. An intention could be described as a commitment to have an act. By this, an example I like to use is, imagine someone wanted to go and get the local newspaper, and all they do is they go to a local shop and simply buy it. But there could be a risk the newspaper isn't there, but there's next to no importance on it because, for one, it's not going to have that much of an impact on their life, and two, they could just simply go somewhere else. So they simply commit that they're going to have the newspaper and they simply just go and get it. And that's simply when we're aligned with something, is when we're going to get it, when we're intending to get it, not when we're dreaming and hoping for it. We don't get our dreams, we get what we intend to have. And if you're intending to have something, it means you're free of excessive importance because you know it's already yours, and you move in with alignment to take action towards it as well, which leads to another big misconception, is by simply sitting and wishing and hoping for something that it's going to attract into your life, which there are situations and circumstances you can attract into your life without necessarily taking lots of action towards it. But a big misconception is they can just literally sit there and meditate on it. The reason this is a big misconception is, for one, if you're truly aligned with something and intending towards it, your unconscious would believe that's the reality you're in, and you would move towards it without even being consciously aware of to why. So if you're having resistance and not wanting to move towards something, it's actually a sign that you don't fully believe in it and that you're not aligned with it, and you're just trying to trick yourself and convince yourself that you are. And also have to remember, we've saying before, we live in a binary reality. So there's also a physical and a metaphysical. There are certain laws we have to adhere to that we have to move towards physically. So let's say, for example, someone wants to become a doctor and they're visualizing it and they're applying whatever manifestation technique to become a doctor. Just by simply visualizing it doesn't mean you're going to become a doctor, no matter how skillful you get at it. You're going to have to go to medical school and whatever other training you have to in order to become a doctor eventually. Just by simply being in alignment vibrationally isn't going to get you there. Well, I said that slightly wrong, because if you were, you'd actually be taking physical action towards it with no resistance, because that would be in alignment with the reality you're going to, and you'd be directed there unconsciously without even necessarily conscious being aware of to why. So going back to the point of having a lot of desire for something or placing a lot of importance on it, that it causes an imbalance in energies in the universe strive to be in balance. I'm just going to continue to use the phrase from reality transurfing called excess potential, just because it'll be easier. That by having that excessive amount of desire or importance is basically a sign that you're out of alignment. That's a vibration you're sending out. It's going to cause you to attract obstacles and different challenges along the way, or even completely push the desired circumstances or event completely out of your life. And this is quite often when people have gone after something for a long time, start to give up when it's outside of their conscious awareness and they're no longer placing a lot of importance on it, is when it comes into their life. So a great example of this is someone who's wanted to meet an ideal romantic partner and they keep focused on it, thinking about who they want to meet. They keep attracting the wrong people and they start to shift and develop on themselves. They don't focus so much on meeting that right partner. And all of a sudden, out of the blue, they get invited to a type of party or a situation they wouldn't normally go to, or even think about meeting anyone there, and they end up meeting their ideal partner. So ways of reducing excess potential, and the most important being is that you're taking physical aligned action towards what you wanted to experience and manifest, or what you wanted to change and fix. That also makes it easier for different circumstances and opportunities to present it to you as well. Another analogy I like is you can't win the lottery if you don't even go and buy a ticket. You also ask yourself, what's the worst case scenario that'll happen if you don't get what it is that you are desiring? Or if you can find an alternative and find a way of shifting your perspective so you don't see it as an important, or you're not craving it as much. You'll be much more aligned with it and you'll find circumstances will change towards it and present themselves much easier. I'll cover some more ways how to do this later on. For now, I want to go through another important overlooked aspect of changing what you want to attract into your life, and this is changing and being aware of your circumstances and what's surrounding you. Our unconscious mind has an association to everything around us. So again, to do with our two prime drives of either gaining pleasure or avoiding pain, and to find what something means. So, for example, our unconscious mind will have a association to what food means, to what exercise means, to what money means, and based on these associations, whether they're more towards pleasure or pain, will shift and change our behavior and actions around it, but also what we attract around these different areas as well. So to expand on this, our conscious is always searching to find the meaning of something and what something means. Whenever you have a strong emotional experience, whether it's good or bad, it'll find what's unique to that experience and then attach it to that stimulus or that experience. So for an example, I guarantee there's a song that reminds you of someone, whether it's positive or negative, or an event or an experience. And the reason for that is why it reminds you of a certain individual or experience is because during the time of hearing that song, you was either doing something with someone or having an experience that was either very pleasurable or very painful. So your unconscious linked to that song, that event or experience. And this is a very important concept to understand when it comes to changing our unconscious beliefs and associations, to understand how this works. Because quite often we'll have completely irrational associations to something unconsciously that doesn't even make any sense. That's sabotaging all the various manifestation attempts that we're trying to do and all the changes we're trying to create in our life. And we're even more perceptible to our unconscious creating associations from the ages from when we're first born to around 7 or 8 years old, because naturally we're in more of a fetus state. We're taking things in more like a sponge, and things are naturally slipping more into our unconscious minds because we're in a theta brainwave state, which is close to being like a trance-like hypnotic state. So to use an example again around money, let's say someone experienced their parents having a very heated argument around not having enough finances and then blaming it on supposedly greedy rich people, and there was a lot of emotion behind it, and you felt a similar emotion yourself, and you don't even remember this experience, but it was picked up very powerfully in your unconscious. You can create an unconscious association to money being hard to get or bad or evil, and make it so difficult for people to change and attract the circumstances they're wanting around money because they're completely unconsciously aware of the associations that they have to it. And again, I'm going to cover some exercises you can do later on that can start helping you become consciously aware of what these associations you have may be. And obviously, you might not be interested in anything around money. I'm just using that as a common example. It's quite often that's what people are wanting to change when it comes to attracting more wealth into their life. So expanding on this now and how our environment can influence us, especially based on our unconscious associations. We're all having an unconscious association to what a cluttered home means, as quite often on the various TV shows, films, or whatever form of media it may be, it's often associated to a cluttered, filthy home to be related to and associated with poverty. Now, this might not sound very exciting, but one of the best things you can do if you're wanting to attract more wealth into your life is actually just making sure your house is tidy, because a clean and tidy home is associated to having more wealth. So just that change alone, for example, will have a shift on your unconscious, because you'll have a association to what a dirty and also a clean home will have. I mean, it'll have a different impact on your unconscious because it'll have a different association around it. Which in relation leads to another very important point, is who you surround yourself with. You've likely already heard the phrase of you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. What you might not have heard so much about is why you might be still holding on to people in your life who aren't serving you and putting you towards your true purpose in your life or what's empowering you. Now, I'm not saying to go and eliminate everyone out of your life who may be having a negative effect on you, as this isn't always possible, especially with certain family members. But what you can control and worth considering is how much time you spend with certain individuals, but also why you might be having certain people or allowing certain people into your life in the first place. As some of you may have someone in mind in particular thinking of, well, why do I let that person into my life? And you may unconsciously have a feeling of guilt of if you were to remove that person from your life because they may be going through challenging or difficult times themselves, but then they're just bringing everyone else down around them. So whether it's worth keeping someone or removing someone from your life, that's a question you'll have to decide upon on yourself. The only thing I want to mention is why you might be having that person in your life. Is it because they're bringing joy or empowering you in some way? Or are you just purely having them in your life because of a feeling of guilt and that you feel obliged to help them for some reason, even though whatever reason that might be is not your responsibility? We also have a need for connection, which I'm not going to cover right now, but we're social creatures. It's in wide within us to be sociable with people and to remove someone out of our life, especially if we're making radical changes and we don't have many other people around us. It can be very difficult and also frightening to remove certain individuals out of our life. And quite often it'll take and come to a point where someone's having such a negative impact upon us that we associate so much pain to that individual being in our life that we can't tolerate it anymore, then remove them. But quite often for both parties, and this is the same with relationships as well that I'm not going to go into, if this is something that you're feeling or experiencing, it's better for both sides just to remove them now and be aware of if they're having either an empowering or a disempowering impact in your life. And I use those words because positive, well, having a good or bad impact in your life is subjective, whether something's good or bad. Whereas something empowering, disempowering, you can decide that for yourself, whether it's basically serving you or not. Another important area to cover is that how the lower aspects of our mind, which also could be known as our ego, will battle over our intentions and will stop us from being able to manifest what we're wanting if we don't understand these important concepts I'm about to mention. And by ego, I don't mean the definition of being egotistical or thinking that someone's above or better than other people. I mean the term used in Eastern philosophies of the false self, the aspects of our mind that we identify and think we are, which isn't our true nature or who that we truly are. It's our egos that like to think that the creators of our own reality. Our egos don't want to believe and think it's a greater intelligence or a higher version of ourselves that's creating the reality. Even if someone thinks, no, I like the idea of a greater intelligence helping me, deep down, it's yourself, your ego, should I say, that want to feel like it's yourself alongside working with, say, the universe, for example, is that caused the universe to manifest what you wanted, but in actual fact, it's because it's the ego that influenced the universe to give you what you wanted, so it was still the ego that created it. because the ego has a need for significance, which again I'll cover needs in the future. But basically, we have a need to feel significant and important, and also to feel certain as well that we are in control. And by giving that control completely away to something outside of our awareness, something that we don't truly experience through our five senses and know it's definitely serving us or being influenced by our unconscious beliefs or what we're consciously aware of, makes us feel uncertain, and their egos will want to battle that concept and still deep down believe, even if you try and convince yourself otherwise, that it's the ego that's in control. And this is something that's very important to become aware of, because if you want to truly start becoming aligned and co-creating your reality, you need to become aware that your ego will want to battle this concept, even if you try and convince and trick yourself otherwise. Your egos are very cunning and will always make us think it's thinking one thing, but deep down it's actually doing another, or believing another, should I say. This concept might be quite confusing for a lot of you initially at first, as this is a very deep concept I'm going into now. I was considering whether to mention or bring this concept up within this video, as it's a lot more advanced. However, if you're more familiar with meditation and Eastern philosophies and the term and philosophy around the ego, you might understand it more. Otherwise, it might be worth coming back to this concept in the future. So expanding on this, let's say someone has manifested a new partner, money, or a raise, and they've done whatever technique and it's come into their experience. They'll want to celebrate and feel like, yes, I've attracted and I've brought this into my life. And it's the ego that's taking the satisfaction and the self approval and praise of creating, attracting that result. In actual reality, it's through our unconscious minds and what we're linked and connected to that attracted and manifested it for us, even if we ourselves and our ego and our conscious mind drove this into our unconscious. Just on a quick side note, without going into too much detail now, if you overly celebrate achieving and manifesting a result, it actually creates excess potential and can create problems around the corner. So whenever you do manifest or get a desired result, be grateful and happy for it, but place the level of achievement on a greater and higher power and be grateful to that rather than praising yourself. Don't worry if you don't fully understand a lot of what I've said initially, as a lot of it's quite advanced and can take a long time to fully understand. It's something I still struggle with myself at times, so it's not an easy concept just to initially apply from the get-go. But however, by starting to become aware of these concepts, it can make a very powerful impact on how you go about manifesting and creating changes in your life. So to expand on this and how our egos battles with higher powers, if you're anything like I used to be myself, where anything had to be from a logical, scientific standpoint where it was provable by facts, you're either very skeptical or, depending on where you are on your journey right now, don't fully believe that there is in your core a higher power. And our egos will, even with an intellectual understanding of the concepts I'm saying, will still want to believe it's itself that's creating these changes. But here are some steps you can start taking to help the logical part of your mind to start help believing that the circumstances of your life aren't just a coincidence and that it's been influenced and manifested through your unconscious, and you've not always been consciously aware of the experiences that you've been manifesting. And again, to mention, if you wanted to see this list visually, it's available an article on the website. So you can do this by keeping a daily journal of the experiences you have in your life, with an emphasis on synchronicities, such as someone you've spoken to or haven't thought about in years who randomly calls you on a day where you're just thinking about them. So when you haven't thought about someone for a long time and out of the blue they just suddenly decide to contact you, this would be like a good example of what you could start keeping a journal of. I don't just mean a random diary where you keep random notes in where, "Dear diary, today I don't like the way Linda looked at me as I was going down the hallway." No, I mean a journal just purely for synchronicity type of events. Something else that's worth keeping in a journal and keeping a track of is any manifestation techniques you've applied, or any kind of meditations, or something you've put a lot of focus on over a long period of time. And the reason this is useful to do, because you can look back and see what kind of emotions and thoughts you were doing previously, or any kind of techniques you've tried, and you can look back in the future and see what results it's caused, what synchronicities and events have occurred because of it. And over time, this will start to make you become more and more aware that the experiences you're having aren't just a coincidence. Other powerful methods you can follow and do, and write these down as you're doing them as well, as it will help bring it out of your subconscious awareness more, is by thinking back to life-changing decisions you've made, and such as people you decided to marry, job or education you decided to take. Make a list of them and any events that led to those decisions, and what are the chances of them occurring, and how those unlikely events are impacting your life still today. So basically, if you just suddenly, by going to a certain party one evening that was completely for entertainment purposes, just purely for your own entertainment, you ended up meeting a business partner or the love of your life, or someone who brought you the equivalent of 10 sales that would have taken you months to do, something like that, and what led to you having those experiences and what decisions you made that led to them. By making a list of these kind of events will have a very powerful impact on you becoming more consciously aware of how different decisions and how you felt and have basically manifested those experiences into your life, if what I'm saying makes sense. What I'm basically trying to say is you want to get as much evidence written down of what you've experienced in your own personal life, of very unlikely events and circumstances to occur, and how they've ended up coming into your circumstances, and by keeping notes as well, you can see decisions and the thoughts you're doing now are impacting what happens in your future, as the physical actions we take, we usually tend to see instant changes, whereas our thoughts and vibrations can take many, many times longer. So this is why keeping notes of it is very useful. Also, by watching and listening to other people's stories and videos, and there's plenty on YouTube as well, but you can search for plenty online of other people's synchronicity events, different manifestations are brought into their life, as these can be powerful and start to make you think maybe this stuff is real. But the most powerful ones are always your own personal experiences, because you know them are true because they're your own experiences. Listening to someone else's are always different interpretations, so you can never know how reliable they truly are. A very powerful technique to do is basically taking any manifestation technique and intending to manifest something that has very little importance to you, something that's out of the ordinary enough to know that if it does come into your life and you manifested it, that you know it wasn't just a coincidence, but at the same time it'll be easier for you to forget, and you're not creating any excess potential with it, because this makes it far easier for you to attract it. And by doing this, it will increase your confidence in yourself to attract and manifest what you want, and it'll also make you believe in these concepts of manifesting to be real as well, as a major part of having any of these concepts to work, so you can consciously and effectively manifest what you're wanting, is to know that you have the power yourselves to change and create these circumstances into your life. Now, to expand upon everything I've said so far, and to go through another very important concept and an area that's very often misunderstood, and that's to consciously keep focusing on what you desire and what you're wanting to manifest. Whenever something's in your conscious awareness, it's no longer in the unconscious. So that basically means it's no longer being manifested. When you're constantly focusing on something, the reason why that can work is because the emotion and the focus of it and repeatedly doing it eventually drives it into the unconscious, and that's when it begins to manifest. But if you keep constantly focusing on something and keep having it in your conscious awareness, it's a sign of you don't truly believe it's yours. Two, it's no longer in your unconscious, so it's no longer being attracted to you in a sense, unless there's strong emotion behind it and it's being driven into your unconscious. And it usually creates excess potential because you're placing too much importance on that particular event or circumstance to manifest, because you keep trying to focus on it to bring it into your life. An analogy I really like to use to explain this is, say if you've gone into a restaurant and you've placed an order, once you place that order, would you expect it to be delivered? You wouldn't know when, but you would know eventually that it would come. I mean, I know some restaurants can be awful, but let's just do it with this analogy. When you keep bringing anything you're wanting to manifest or concerned about into your conscious awareness, it is the equivalent of constantly going to the waiter or the chef and asking them if your order is ready and demanding that they come to your table whilst you ask them, which greatly slows down the process, and if done enough times will lead you to being told to leave the restaurant and sabotaging your own order, which would have arrived if you had just waited and believed it was going to. So what I'm basically saying is, once you've intended to manifest something and you've driven you starting to believe it in your unconscious, that to trust in the process and to stop bringing it into your conscious awareness and just know that it's going to come. It can be hard to develop this faith and belief because anything you manifest will come through logical means. So whenever you're doing any kind of manifestation practice, following any techniques, you'll notice that generally things will come via what would be considered as logical means. By this, in a way that doesn't seem like a miraculous miracle, such as if you have been wanting to manifest more money and an unknown rich relative dies, and you inherit a large amount or slightly more than what you needed. Or you've been intending to meet a new romantic partner and you've been invited to a party you wouldn't normally go to, or expect to meet the qualities of that partner there, but you end up meeting your ideal partner. This is another reason why keeping a journal of the experiences you're having, especially around anything you're putting extra emphasis on manifestation, that you keep a journal of it so you can see what impact it's having, as usually unless you remember what you've done, you will likely just overlook it and see it as a coincidence. And a part of what makes this even trickier, what I was saying, it tends to be the stuff that we forget about, as it's no longer in our conscious awareness and it's in our unconscious minds, is when it will manifest. Now, another very important but also controversial point to bring up, and now please let me explain before you decide to click away from this going, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But let me explain, because this is likely going to go against pretty much every other teaching you likely come across, but it'll make more sense once I've explained it. And that is, you don't have to be in a positive, a happy state in order to manifest. Now, give me a chance here. I know some of you are probably having some resistance right now if you're aware of a lot of different manifestation concepts and teachings. So let me give you an example. Is every person who is financially wealthy or has by a cultural standard achieved a lot of happiness and they're full of joy? The obvious answer is no, and I'm sure you've heard countless stories of people yourself, such as celebrities, actors, singers, etc., who are deeply unhappy. Another example is stories of business owners and entrepreneurs who go through tremendous pain, both physically and mentally, but then achieve great results based on what they wanted to achieve. This is because they followed their intuition, implied intention, which will be covered in a bit more detail soon. So now you might be wondering, well, do my vibrations and emotions matter when you are manifesting? And I've noticed, you may have noticed yourself, as I have myself, when you're in a higher vibration, you're feeling happier and full of more joy, things come easier and manifest more. Does it make an impact when it comes to manifesting? Yes, it does. Now, let me just make this clear. I said you don't have to be, doesn't mean it doesn't help in order to manifest. So to go through this in more detail, extending on the previous examples, if someone believes they have to go through very challenging times in order to become financially wealthy, whilst at the same time being ungrateful, they'll attract countless obstacles on the way, making the result take much longer and be more challenging than it needed to be. Also, depending on their unconscious beliefs, will determine how the manifestation of the result will make them feel. So, for example, someone who is wanting more money is feeling very happy and grateful for what they currently have and unconsciously believe and sets an intention to have more and receives it in a way that brings them even more joy and more reasons to be grateful, such as an offer for a job that is more to their liking with better pay. On the flip side, someone who has a very wealthy mindset, who believes they can create abundance easily but is deeply unhappy and ungrateful, will likely create financial wealth, but it comes via means that brings more suffering, such as a job or business that they dislike and only do it because of the money. So what I'm basically saying is you can still attract, say, very impactful results. I'm not going to say necessarily the results you'd want by having unconscious associations of beliefs, such as, for example, you can easily create wealth, but based on how you're feeling and your emotions, your vibrations will change how those results come along. So, again, expanding on it, if you are wanting to create more wealth, but you're deeply unhappy and ungrateful during the process, and you don't believe that you can make them in a happy way, well, in a way that will bring you more joy and happiness, should I say, you're likely going to create that wealth, but in a way that continues to make you feel the same way that you do now, unless you've made changes in intending to shift what you're attracting into your life with different viewpoints and beliefs. And it'll also make changes to what you'll attract along the way in order whilst that result is manifesting. So, for example, to expand on it just in a bit more detail, a business owner who's going to make more sales or get more customers, if they're happy and full of more joy whilst they're doing it, even though they'll still have challenges, they'll come about in means that they will likely enjoy more. Such as, for example, it takes longer to make certain sales. It could be with customers they enjoy spending more time with, or on the flip side, if they've got a lot of anger, hatred, and they're deeply unhappy, they're the kind of customer they're more likely going to attract, they'll have to deal with, even though in the long run they could still get that same result of the financial wealth that they want. It's not exactly how I'm saying, it's not black and white. It's quite a complicated concept to fully explain, but I hope that clears it a bit more. And I don't fully expect you to believe what I'm saying completely either, because I've heard it myself for so many years with so many teachings that just keep on about being a high positive vibration, which, if that's the kind of life you want, and I still do very highly recommend that, because at the end of the day, what's the point of manifesting different circumstances if you're not able to enjoy what you currently have now anyway, which is a different talk and topic altogether. But it's just important to make the point, and you can ask this for yourself and look at other people. Don't just take my words for it. Look at people who have gone through tremendous pain and suffering, who have ended up having tremendous lives and very big impacts on the world. So just take one example, Oprah Winfrey. She went through an awful lot of challenges. You can look into her backstory for yourselves if you're not aware of already, and I don't need to say much more about her. Now, another very important area to cover, and that's the difference between an emotion and intuition. And this is something I still do struggle with myself, especially since naturally I tend to be more of a logical thinker, and if I don't practice and be consciously aware, I go very much in my head and just focus on all the logical aspects to things. So this tends not to come to me as naturally as some of the other areas I've been talking about. That said, I feel like this is an area that isn't covered or discussed enough at all, and hopefully what I'm about to share will give some insights to those of you who aren't that aware of the differences between intuition and emotion either. So you'll already know what I mean by an emotion, but in case for those of you who don't know, by intuition, a definition by dictionary.com is the ability to understand something instinctively without the need for conscious reasoning. So basically, another way of saying it is, you just know something deep down without any logical reason to why. You just know that there's something wrong. So to give you an example, let's say you're just introduced to somebody and everyone seems to like him, and on the surface they seem like a great person, but just deep down you know something's not right about them. And it actually turns out this individual could be wanting to try and sabotage your job, they're trying to do something with your partner, or just deep down they're just not a good person. There's plenty of other examples around it, but without any actual logical, factual evidence. You just knew something's wrong. And I'm sure all of you are listening can, if you at least think about it for long enough, can think of at least some time where you've had an intuitive knowledge or feeling around something. You didn't know why, but it turned out to be correct. This is basically what intuition is. Now, on the flip side of this, and this is going to help to explain my point between the differences of an emotion and intuition. So, taking the same kind of example, you're introduced to somebody again, and this time you immediately don't like them. You just associate it to someone you've remembered in your past. It could be conscious or unconscious, and you just think, yeah, I don't like this person. There's something about the face, something they wear, whatever the reason is. You don't like this person. There's just a reason you don't. And then for whatever reason, following this example, you end up having to spend more time with them, and they end up becoming one of your best friends, and you realize the feelings you had around them were completely false. Now, this can be harder to explain, or this can be basically you feel like emotionally someone makes you feel angry, someone makes you feel upset, but you don't have a sense of knowing. I guess there's a good way of describing it. You just don't know deep down that it's like just a sense of knowing rather than just an emotion. Whereas like an emotion of hate, love, sadness can all be completely irrational reasons to why you feel the emotion, and it's not through intuition. You're not getting it from a higher knowing or a guide or whatever you believe. It's just an emotional reason, which quite often is more cognitive. It's just like an unconscious association to why you feel that emotion rather than intuitive knowing. Now, the reason this is so important to understand is because quite often the majority of what we get in life and the results we get are based on our decisions, and the decisions mostly come from either our emotional states we're in or associate to something because it will change the meaning we have around it, and also our intuition. And our intuition we get from a higher intelligence, something that's guiding us, whereas our emotions is usually just through our ego, through unconscious programming, which quite often is not something we've consciously chosen to associate to a given circumstance. So, for example, let's say someone's struggling to lose weight and they're really wanting to, but unconsciously they associate not eating as much to suffering or causing them pain or whatever the association could be. That's like an emotional association, rather it's not intuition that they should go and do this or that. Having that bad feeling around losing weight. I hope that makes sense. And the same can come to what teachings you'll follow, what actions you'll go to take, what partner you'll meet, if whether you stay with your current job or business or move to another. And following your intuition will lead you more towards what your actual life purpose is and what you should be doing, what's going to bring you the best results in your life. And you'll find when you're going towards stuff you feel intuitively, that's when you're truly going to be congruently linked between your emotions and your unconscious and your conscious choices, and that's when things will happen seamlessly and you'll get the best results. Or even when challenges come along your way, they won't feel as much of a struggle because you'll just have more of a sense of joy and purpose behind it. Whereas on the flip side, you could go for something where logically you feel like, right, this is the best choice, even though intuitively you could feel like, no, I shouldn't be doing this, but logically it makes sense to. You still go about it anyway because it logically makes sense, and you just get challenge after challenge and you don't understand why, and you just feel extremely unlucky and you can't understand why you can't make things work. So I'm hoping this is starting to make sense now, why it's so important to understand the difference between intuition and an emotion. I could make this a video by itself, or the same with the majority of what I've covered in this video. And like I say, I struggle with this myself naturally, as I tend to be more of a logical thinker, and I've had to be more consciously aware and condition myself in a way to feel and trust more in my intuition. So the best way to go about it is how much of a sense of knowing is it, and quite often your brain will go to trick you to justify things. So for example, there's something you should go and do, such as leaving and moving on to another job or finding another partner or anything at all, but deep down you have fear around it, and you could go, oh, intuitive, no, I know I shouldn't do that, but really it's just an emotion of fear that's stopping you, even though deep down you have a knowing it's what you should do. So it's really sitting and A good thing you can do is to become more aware of this is meditating, getting a deep theta state, so you can start to really feel, is this just an emotion and it just seems to slip away, that that emotion can change, or is it like a sense of knowing that stays? So I think without going into too much detail, that's the best method and way I could say of explaining the difference between intuition and an emotion. Now, I know what I've covered so far has been mainly theory based, but this is going to be a little bit more theory than it's going to be mostly practical, how you can start putting all of this together. Because without the theory behind it, it's going to make applying the practical aspects I'm about to go through very difficult, and in fact, you won't even be aware of of these practical steps being steps or techniques, methods, a way of looking at things that are even worth considering. But with that said, this is going to be a little bit more theory, but it's going to be much more practical based moving on. So what you want to start doing with putting all this together, you want to start practicing intending. So as I was saying earlier, intending could be described as a commitment to have an act. So as I was mentioning with going through the newspaper earlier, so as you start following your intuition, that's when you'll know what's the right direction for you to go towards. So quite often a very common question people struggle with is finding their life purpose, what they should be doing. And this is something I've struggled with myself a lot, even though I've known there's been areas I've wanted to go into. I've not been that sure. But then when you really sit with it, you eventually find a knowing of where you should be going, or even if you don't know right now, when you follow your intuition, it'll guide you down towards where you should be going and what you should be doing. And expanding on this, you want to avoid intending going for multiple goals at once. So a good analogy for this is imagine that there's a stream of water flowing down, and that's like your energy of intending. And the more focused and precise that is, the more powerful your intentions are going to be. But then let's say you want to go for multiple goals at once, it's like cutting multiple different directions that stream can go to, so it's going to weaken the force of that stream that's going down, because now it's going down multiple different, forgot the correct term for rivers flowing through, is it different channels? I think you know what I mean anyway. So it's going to reduce the strength of your intention. So it's like trying to chase several rabbits at once, to use another analogy. You want to focus just on that one thing at a time. I mean, you may have little areas you will keep working on top of around others, but you know, in terms of making major changes in your life, you want to be focused on like one thing at a time. So now I'm going to recap what I've covered so far and then go more into the practical side of you actually applying this, since there's been so much I've covered. Just to recap it, if you're unaware of how a manifestation technique works or the main concepts generally around manifestation, I know there's a lot of different schools of thought, you risk making the situation even worse. You want to see manifesting as a skill rather than just a casual meditation or technique, as we're constantly manifesting, whether we're consciously aware of it or not. We're not just going to manifest only when we intend to. It's just when we go to intend, we're consciously choosing what we're going to start manifesting, rather than it just being dictated by unconscious programming. The power to manifest and co-create our reality comes and travels through our unconscious mind, now the conscious. Our conscious mind is only used to help drive what we're wanting to manifest into the unconscious. The power is within the unconscious. Remember that, that is a key point. Our brain is designed to keep us safe rather than to make us happy, which can lead to us creating more of what we don't want, with our brains thinking it's keeping us safe. The universe has forces that help keep it in balance and harmony. By placing an excessive amount of importance on a situation, you create excess potential. That causes the universe to balance its excess potential by eliminating the cause of the importance, which can include pushing the desired situation even further away. Your surroundings influence your unconscious beliefs and view of yourself. By creating a positive environment, such as a clean home, it has a positive impact on your unconscious, with the opposite also being true. The lower aspects of our minds, as also we describe as our ego, not only doesn't want to believe in a higher power, it will also battle the idea, and will want the desired changes to come by methods that the ego itself sees as logical. so it can feel like it achieved the result itself. Consistently focus on desired outcomes, unless you're intending to move towards the desired outcome, will create excess potential and will begin to sabotage the goal or bring more obstacles in your way. If you don't know how to achieve the goal, move towards and aim to be aligned in the right circumstances will present themselves to you. When a desired outcome is in your conscious awareness, it is no longer in your unconscious, which slows the manifestation down. You don't have to be in a positive state to manifest powerful results. However, by being in a positive state, the results will come by means that will further reflect your current vibrations. So basically, by being in a higher vibration, you'll get results that will bring you more joy and happiness, rather than, using the example from earlier, getting more money by means of a job that you dislike. And again, to repeat this, as this is a very important point, with intending, could be described as a commitment to have and act. It's our intentions that become and manifest into our physical reality and experiences, not dreams or desires. Now we're going to bring all of this together and go through practical steps you can start taking to start working on improving these areas. And they're mainly going to be focused around your unconscious and unconscious associations. So to start with, when it comes to becoming more aware of unconscious associations in changing your beliefs around something, there's many different schools of thought, and I'm not going to claim these are the best way to shift them. As if you knew someone or had a coach, it'd be much easier as someone. It's always easier to work with someone to help shift your beliefs and to help something become consciously aware, especially if they're trained in doing so, than it is to do it yourself. However, what I'm going to go through effective methods you can use yourself if you don't have the luxury or convenience to have a trained professional or coach to help you. The most effective and powerful way of shifting a view, belief, association to anything is going through a very powerful emotional or traumatic experience, which is very difficult to replicate yourself consciously. Usually they'll come from a traumatic experience or a very powerful positive experience that isn't easy to replicate. So for example, if someone was a smoker and they wanted to quit smoking and they keep being told it's bad for them and they're coughing and it's causing them pain, but it's not strong enough to shift that association, but then eventually they're in hospital and they get told if you carry on you're going to die, and the child comes up to them and says, daddy, daddy, or mummy, or whatever, I want you to stop smoking because if you carry on, you're not going to get to see me at my wedding, or whatever it is they say, and it hits them on a deep emotional level. That can be like a traumatic experience that shifts their association around smoking. But like I say, they are rare experiences. It's not every day you're going to have a traumatic or powerfully positive experience that brings up enough emotions to make that kind of shift. So what is vital to start doing when it comes to shifting the beliefs is at least first bring them to your conscious awareness and becoming aware of how you associate something to begin with. So you can start doing this by making a list of what something means to you. In fact, just before I go through this list, a great analogy I want to go through when it comes to shifting a belief, and we'll go through the list in a moment so you can do this. Great analogy I like from a book called Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins, and a book I highly recommend, by the way. He's the analogy of a belief is just a sense of certainty that something's real. It could be unconscious, real or true, should I say. So it could be completely unconscious as well. So you may feel certain that certain group of people act in a certain way, or that they're good or they're bad, or I am confident or I am shy. And you have a lot of experiences, and it could be unconscious as well, that makes you feel like, no, I know this is true, or I know this is right. And the analogy uses is like, think of a table, like a belief is a table, and the legs underneath are your reference points that keep it stable, what make you feel certain that this belief is true or real. When it comes to start shifting a belief, you want to start questioning these reference experiences and start taking those legs from underneath the table, especially when it comes to limiting beliefs, because pretty much every single limiting belief, well, all limiting beliefs are based in some way on false reference experiences or associations that we've created unconsciously that we're not even consciously aware of why we've got them to begin with. So to start going through how we can apply this now, we're going to use money as the example. So say if you've got a piece of paper, or if you wanted to do this on PC or Mac or whatever bit of technology, split it in half and can do like one side, the empowering sides, the disempowering association, empowering association, so two sides. You do it around money and start to write about what money means to you. Or if you prefer, you can just do it as a load of sentences and just keep writing. You could try both methods, as some work better for others. Keep writing on either both sides, or just keep writing sentences of what money means to you and what impact it has on you. So a few questions I'll help start bringing this up is, what impact does having money have? Is money good? Is it bad? What impact does it have on you? And as you start to answer these questions and start writing down these different meanings, you start to find it either has a painful meaning, as an empowering meaning. For example, some people could mean, it means freedom, empowerment, joy, luxury. Or on the flip side, people could write it's greedy, it's hard to come by, it's evil, it's lacking, there's not enough. So whatever these associations are, you want to get as many down as you can. And it's common as well that people can have a mixture of positive and negative associations. So don't be confused by, if you have very good associations, how you can also have negative. Because quite often it could have just been completely out of your conscious awareness. So this is why making this list is a very effective method to start doing. So if you start writing those down, if you've decided to follow along and start writing associations around money or whatever you've chosen, I'd recommend pausing the video and getting as much down as you can. And then I'm about to go through some questions you can start asking yourself. That's going to help to start removing those legs from under the table, so to speak. Those reference points that you may unconsciously have caused you to have this feeling of certainty around something, which you could end up discovering that they're completely based on false concepts and you just weren't even aware that's how you viewed it. And if you wanted to see these questions visually, again, the article's on the website and it's called Manifesting the Ultimate Practical Guide. So if you go on there, these questions are near the bottom. So what you want to start asking yourself, so find one of the negative associations or meanings you have attached to something that's causing a disempowering effect on your life, such as, for example, you're too nervous to go up to people of whatever sex you're attracted to, whether it's the same or the opposite sex. And you say you keep being too anxious and nervous to go up to them and you have some meaning to why. Or say again, if it's to do with money, that you feel like there's always a sense of lack or you can never earn enough. You can start asking yourself these questions to start shifting them. So number one being, is this belief ridiculous or absurd? So basically with that question, you want to think, well, is the reason why I'm thinking this, is it actually true, or is it actually quite ridiculous that I feel this way around it? Is it actually based on reality? Or is it just a feeling of certainty I have around it? Question two, is it worth following or replicating the person I learned this from? So with money, for example, let's say if you learn from your parents that money is hard to come by, is this person worth modeling in this area? They might be a great person to model overall. They might have a great life and lots of great attributes you want to have as part of yourself. But say in this certain particular area, they may have very limiting, disempowering beliefs around money. And you've learned from them that money's hard to come by, and you find that they're not very good with money at all. They spend it what you consider as not very wisely, and you just wouldn't want to replicate what they do with money at all. So then you can ask yourself, is this person who I learned this belief from actually worth modeling? And if the answer is obviously no, you want to start questioning yourself, well, is this really a belief I want to keep? Which leads to the next question, number three, is this belief serving me? Which is quite obvious too. If it's having a positive impact on your life, then it's a yes. If not, then it's a no. So this one starts getting deeper now. This is important because whenever you're wanting to shift something, you want to start associating pain to the current belief or behaviour and start associating pleasure to changing it. So question number 4, what impact is maintaining this belief having on my life? So for example, expanding on this question, what impact is it having on your family, your partner, your kids, parents, friends, or any other area of your life, your business? What impact is having and maintaining this belief having on your life? Which actually coincides with question number 5, is the impact is maintaining this belief having on those around you. So work through those questions. Like I say, they're available on the article on the site if you're wanting to look through and read through them yourself. And I'd highly recommend you going through this process for any area that you're finding you're struggling with. And no matter what you're trying, whether you're trying to make changes just by physically moving towards something, whether you keep sabotaging your own results, or you try and manifest various manifestation techniques and you keep getting poor results, I'd recommend going through these questions, as the more you start shifting your association to it, you'll start to shift what's in your unconscious around it, and then things will just start to seamlessly change on their own. This next one, what I'm going to recommend you can do, is going to sound a bit out there for some of you, but just be open to it and give it a try for yourself. And that is by setting an intention to become aware of limiting beliefs. You can also do this to get the answer to something as well. So those of you who are familiar with the book Think and Grow Rich, Napoleon Hill used this technique I'm about to mention to help come up with the name of the book. So I can't remember the exact story, but basically when he was speaking to his publisher, he needed to come up with what they're calling a $1 million title, I believe, or something along that lines. And what he kept coming up with, his publisher at the time wasn't happy with it, and he had 24 hours to come up with a new name, and then he was going to publish whatever it is. And just before he went to bed at night, he demanded his unconscious mind to give him a good book title name. And in the morning, he said it came to him, and hence the name Think and Grow Rich. And needless to say, how successful that book has become. You can do the same when you want to become aware of a limiting belief, and also if you're wanting the answer to something. This is quite often why when someone has the best ideas come to them when they're having a shower or shaving, whatever it may be, when it's not in their conscious awareness, because basically the unconscious brings it to the surface, because you've been trying to find the answer to something, and it comes when your conscious mind gets out of the way, because the conscious mind that blocks it. Another, well, it's not really a technique, it's more of a question you can ask yourself, even though it's just a simple question, has a very powerful effect if you're going through a lot of challenging times in your life and things just aren't working out the way you want it to. Just ask yourself a simple question: what else could this mean? Everything we experience, how we interpret it, should I say, comes down to the meanings we attach to it. So for example, if you're going through a lot of very challenging, difficult times, you may have the meaning that God's punishing me, the universe doesn't care for me, people don't care for me, whatever it is. Whereas if you keep asking yourself, what else could this mean? It could actually mean, for example, shifting with the example given, that the universe is wanting you to grow, it's wanting you to expand. So not only can you work and improve your own circumstances, you can go and serve and help others as well. Another very important area to start becoming aware of is getting written down what your ideal life would be. And this again is going to help come in line with following your intuition as well. Quite often when people start following, and this has been including myself as well, different manifestation techniques, mythologies, that we want, right, we want to get some more money here to pay for this, we want to meet this partner for this. And it's just making more of a short-term changes here and there, even though, say, meeting an ideal partner will have a big impact on your life, but generally it's more taking snippets or just making temporary fixes or temporary improvements. Whereas if you start to get a clear idea overall where you want your life to head towards, that's what you'll start to intend towards as well, rather than just trying to find snippets of different pieces here and there. You've got a clear area of where you want to go. So for example, say you was on a boat and you was heading towards a destination, and you were just going randomly anywhere. You get to a much better destination, much more to your liking, if you already know and have an intention on your map of where you want to head towards. Hopefully that makes sense, and also it makes it much clearer to your unconscious of where you want to head towards as well. So once you're clear to your unconscious where you want to head towards, that's when you'll start to shift and take actions and notice things that'll lead you to getting those results. So it's a very important area to get clear on. And again, this is why you don't want to start doing some manifestation techniques from the get-go if you wanted to make a big overall change to the quality of your life. So questions that will help for you to start becoming aware of your ideal life. And again, these questions are on the article. And don't just listen to these as well, because you'll and I've been guilty of this myself as well, listening to various programs. You'll answer them in your head, you go, right, I've got the answer to it. You feel a bit of an emotional shift. For in a day or two, something will crop up and you completely forget about it, and it's not made no difference to your life. So especially this area now, if you're not clear on where you wanted to go into your life, what your ideal life would be, if you was to not write it down now, make sure you designate some time to answer these questions, even if you don't follow anything else I've gone through within this video and podcast. So start with these questions, and ideally do it at a time when you're on your own and won't be interrupted. And as you're writing it, feel like you can make anything you're about to write down eventually become your physical reality. So number one being, what would be my ideal job or business to work in be? So whether you're a business owner or a job, what would be the ideal job or business for you to work in or to run? So as I'm going to go through the other questions now and just take a brief time to pause in between each question, but take as long as you need and do it. And again, from the intuition, try and go for more of a sense of knowing what sparks a feeling of inspiration behind you. And if you don't have the answer straight away, you may need to come back to it later and do what I was saying before by demanding you get the answer from your unconscious. So a question 2, what are the traits of my ideal partner? So you might already be with someone already. So this would be a good question to answer to become aware of this is the ideal partner for you. And also, if you are single, what you'd want to look for when you go to meet someone, what traits would you want them to have, just so you start becoming aware. And don't make any rash decisions based on just answering that question if you're considering leaving someone, as there's much more involved around making choices around relationships, and this is what this video is going to go into. This is just overall for where you want to head for your life, not focusing on any specific area, but it's useful just to become aware of it. Then with question 3, where would I live and who would I live with? So again, this is going to be more focused on the future by who do I live with. This could be, do you have children if you don't have children already? I think you get the point with that. I'm going to start going through these faster now, so just pause it in between each one. So number 4, how much money would I have? And with this as well, it's a better question around it would be, what would you be doing with the money as well? Because just having a figure is very abstract, especially if you've never had a great deal of money before. You might think, oh, I want $1 million, 10 million, or even $1 billion or whatever it may be. But in actual fact, what you'd use the money for, you may need far less than you think. So question number 5, do I have a family? If so, how is life for them? So this is more focusing on how the ideal life you're moving towards, what impact you'll have on your kids, for example, such as where they go to school. Question number 6, what would I do with my leisure time? So with your spare time around work, business, or whatever it is you intend and go towards doing, basically what you do in your spare time, what hobbies would you have? What films would you watch? What events would you go see, etc. Question number 7, what is my body and health like? So this is like, what's your figure? Are you sculpted? You can write this down with word you find amusing as well. If you find you have a negative association to your health or body right now, it can be useful to write some words that break how you feel about it. It breaks your pattern. I want to cover the concept of breaking your pattern another time, but basically if you write down, I have a body like an Adonis, I'm sculpted like a Greek god or goddess or whatever it may be. So just write down what your ideal body and health would be like. Then question number 8, how happy and fulfilling is my life? So how much of a sense of joy and how fulfilling is your life? So do you have like a strong sense of purpose? Are you satisfied with what you're doing? Is like another way of describing it. Question number 9, what do I contribute to others? So based on where you've got into from your ideal life, what impact does it have on others as well? Maybe even people you are never even going to meet. Question number 10, what skills or knowledge do I have, or do I learn, or am I learning? Number 11, do I go traveling? If so, where? Question 12, what else do I have in my life that creates an outstanding quality of life? So expanding on any of these questions, and you can also, the more detail you get with this, the better. So these aren't the only questions. I've just come up with this list to help spark ideas to come up to the surface. As if you've never gone through an exercise like this before, usually people just write like, I want more money, I want a good partner, I want more free time, I don't know, whatever it may be. And it's not very specific to where they actually want to be in their life. So these are just to spark and get clear on, oh yeah, there's that part of my life, there's that part of my life, oh yeah, there's my health. So it's more just to help with them. But if there's any areas I've not mentioned around a certain area of your life, there might even be around the manifestation of personal development sides of your life. There might be questions around there I've not asked that you have very specific areas and an idea of where you want to be. So get all of that written down. So I'd recommend pausing the video and then carrying on from there. And welcome back. For those of you who just carried on playing the video and listening, who didn't answer the questions, well, especially at least writing them down, I very highly recommend, if you don't do it now, you go back to do it before you continue with the video and go through the manifesting techniques I want to go through later on. Because how can you plan on manifesting and creating the ideal life if you're not consciously aware of what that is for you? So just before I go through these techniques, a very powerful question you can ask yourself to start helping become aware of the root of the fear you have around pretty much anything. This will also help reduce excess potential and excessive amount of importance on getting a result, which, as I've gone through before, will actually help you get the result easier. Is asking this question: what is the worst case scenario that can happen as a result of what I'm concerned of? So basically, what's the worst thing that can happen from the result you're concerned about? So let's say, for example, you're really hoping you get a promotion because you're needing the money to pay for your rent or whatever it may be. What's the worst case scenario that can happen if you don't get the result you're wanting? Or if there's a result that could happen you're wanting to avoid. So for example, you're concerned about losing your job and you're concerned about losing it, as focusing on it can actually cause it to manifest. In fact, I'm going to go through that in a moment. But just for now, ask yourself, what is the worst case scenario that can happen as a result of what it is you're concerned of? But don't just stop with the first answer that comes to you immediately after asking yourself this question. Once the answer to that has come into your awareness, you want to keep asking yourself the question, what is the result, or what's the meaning of it, or the impact it will have on your life? So basically, what effect will that result have on you? So for example, if you're concerned about losing your job or concerned about not getting a promotion, what impact will that have on your life? So you may say, for example, I won't be able to pay my bills, I won't be able to afford to buy groceries, or whatever it is for you. So ask yourself that, and then once that comes into your awareness, then keep repeatedly asking yourself this question: what is the result or impact that it will have on your life? So keep asking yourself that question over and over and over, and you'll start to get to a deeper root cause of what's the actual root concern of it. So for example, some people might become aware the result of it could lead to you be concerned, it could lead to death. Because of the lack of paying your bills might lead to being homeless. If you're homeless, you can't survive or you can't afford food, so you starve to death, whatever it is. But quite often and not, you'll actually start to discover a lot of the actual root concerns of what it goes down to can quite often be irrational. Now, paying for your bills and everything to do with survival, you can say, yeah, more rational, but I mean, overall, they quite often can be based in areas that aren't as rational. And when you start to have those epiphanies of becoming consciously aware of what the root cause is, you'll start to find, even though the concern will still be there, or it might not be, it won't have half as much of an impact on you. So if it's causing you to create, say, excess potential, for example, this will help dramatically lower it down. If you stick with the processes, it can be a quite uncomfortable exercise to do, but it can also be very powerful. So now I'm actually going to go through some techniques you can start applying that will help to consciously start creating results. But the most powerful thing alongside doing any techniques is everything I've been going through previously in the video, and that's why it's been so long and why I've not just gone straight into doing a quick, if you follow these steps, you'll create the life you want, because I wish it was as simple, as easy as that, and I'm hoping you start to become aware that there's more to it. But by becoming aware and working on these areas I've been mentioning, that you will start to see much greater results. So with that said, here's some tips and techniques you can start applying to make manifesting what you want much easier. So by doing visualizations and meditations either first thing in the morning or immediately before going to bed. The reason is because you're naturally in a more theta brainwave state. So you're basically more in like a hypnotic state. So it's easier to take something and put it into your unconscious. Number two, if you have an object you perceive as lucky, such as a lucky coin or whatever it may be, and or it's just something you have a powerful positive association to, it might even just be a photo of a dead relative, for example. When you hold on to it, you just have very strong positive emotions. By holding on to this or having this near you as you do like a visualization or a meditation, will unconsciously help raise your vibration and create a positive association to whatever it is you're aiming to intend. Now, with number three, this would be much easier to do for some of you than others based on how many people around you and how uncomfortable you may feel with doing this. Is basically placing sticky notes in various areas of where you'll be consistently going. So you've probably heard of stuff before, like say if you're wanting to cut down on eating junk food and you'll take like a photo or a note or a motivational note on the fridge saying don't eat this because you want to become like this, or just something that reminds you. What's more powerful and effective than that is having it in areas that are likely not going to be in your conscious awareness. So say for example you have a big room where you'll constantly eat and you have it in the corner and you have like a little note saying I am abundant or whatever it may be, like an affirmation. So you're not always consciously seeing it, because then it's going to slip into your unconscious mind. So that's a simple, cost-effective technique you can use to start consciously deciding in a way of what goes into your unconscious. I hope that wasn't confusing, because basically when you're not consciously aware of something, that's when it slips into your unconscious. But by what I mean by consciously choosing is that you've chosen the message on the note. And this is one of the reasons as well, without going too much into this now, why you want to be careful of what newspapers, magazines you have around you. And with number four, very much related, listen to subliminal audio. So you can either create these yourself. There's different apps you can get on your phone, on your smartphones, that allow you to create your own subliminal audios. There's plenty of free ones on YouTube as well. I mean, I guess you have to be more wary of what they're actually saying, because if they've been created properly, you won't be able to pick up on consciously what's being said. But you can use at your own discretion if you find a YouTube that creates subliminal audios that you trust. Number five, I've mentioned this earlier, but I'll mention it again because this is a very good practice to get into, especially when you first get into these kind of schools of thought, philosophies around manifesting, is practicing intending for unimportant items or circumstances. As I was saying previously, that with it being unimportant to you, you're going to have much less access potential. It's going to be easy to keep up your conscious awareness, so it's in your unconscious. But make sure you choose something that's quite strange, so if it does manifest, it isn't just a coincidence. And then number 6, the last one I want to go through for this video is when you're in a deep meditative state, focus on a undesired aspect of your life and really focus on how disempowering it makes you feel or the negative emotions you're getting from it. Then focus on what it would feel like for the situation to be changed or resolved to what you're wanting it to be. Then once you have these sensations, picture yourself several years from now in the future looking back at how the changes has impacted your life in a positive way. So say for example you had a negative feelings from a lack of money and you got the money you was wanting, and then you're looking back in the future what that extra income or wealth or whatever it is, how it impacted your life, so you feel like it already happened years ago. So this is just a way of adding on top of visualizations you're probably already doing to make it more powerful as you're like transmuting a negative association and emotion to something that you're wanting and then feel like it's already happened. We can have a very powerful effect. Now obviously these aren't the only techniques out there, or not necessarily even the best. These are just very easy to start applying, and is much less likely to cause you actually manifesting worse or making situations even worse, like I was saying earlier, because if you're following all the steps I've mentioned previously. And just to mention as well, because I said I was going to bring this up later on, so I'll mention it now and I'll start to wrap up, otherwise I'll end up talking for hours around these things. By focusing on something you're wanting, you've got positive associations, emotions behind it, you'll start to manifest and attract it into your life, which a lot of people talk about. But something that isn't spoken about quite as much is if you have a really strong feeling of hatred or anger or sadness, or basically not wanting something, you keep focusing on that not wanting, and it's deep in your unconscious, you're actually going to do the exact same of when you're intending to attract what you're wanting, but in the reverse, you're going to attract what you're not wanting. So this is also very important to remember as well when it comes to applying these techniques, or if you keep focusing on a situation or experience in your life that you've either experienced that you don't like or you're currently going through. So if you've made it all this way to this part of the video, I'm impressed, because I know this has been a long video and there's been a lot of deep topics I've gone through within this single video, and likely a lot of them will be new to the majority of you who are watching. Most people just talk about they want to make changes or improve the quality of their life, or they'll start to move towards something, but not many stick with it and actually stay committed to making lasting, impactful changes. So for you to go through, I'm not too sure how long this video is currently, I think it'll probably be around 2 hours now, probably slightly over. So for you to work your way all the way to this part of the video, I'd take my, metaphorically speaking, hat off to you, as be a kindred spirit to myself. I listen to a lot of longer content myself in the same kind of aspect, in the same way, likely even though I won't be for the exact same reasons, to improve and work on those different areas of our lives. You'll likely have to come back to this video in the future, and I'll be doing much more that are going to go into some of these areas, but more specifically, and cover them in more detail, as this was more of a overall much wider, covering a wider scope of important areas and concepts you want to become aware of overall to start manifesting, attracting better circumstances into your life. But there's still much more that could be said for each area, and some areas I've not even brought up yet. So you'll likely want to come back to this video in the future when you've got a better understanding, or when you've applied some of the practical steps I've mentioned and put them into practice, and as you start actually experiencing the changes I've mentioned and coming back and listening to it again, you start to get a deeper insight into certain audio programs I've listened to and watched myself, where some I would have listened to and watched over 20 times, and each time I'll take a slightly different distinction from it. So don't worry or be concerned if you feel like you've not got everything straight away. I wouldn't expect the vast majority of people to, and it's not because of their ability to understand. You could be far more intelligent than myself. It's just when a concept's new to you, it's just how I learn. You have to base it on different reference experiences. So work through the practical steps, make sure you answer the questions, and then come back to this video again in the future when you've gone through the other videos we'll be uploading through the future. I always like to hear people's comments and views and what the greatest insights they've taken from a video are. So if you could comment below, and also if you could answer this question: how many manifestation techniques do you think you've tried that you're unsure of that have actually gotten you results, or may have actually made things worse? And also, if you're new to the channel and you like what you've heard and you're wanting to carry on hearing more in depth around these different areas I've covered in this video, click on the subscribe button as well. If you've enjoyed this video, let me know the deepest insight you've taken from it, and I shall see you in the next video.